Many of you know that I have reason to be thankful for my ties to the Jewish people, both here in the United States and in the state of Israel. As a working class kid from Dorchester, I had a few options when it came to applying for colleges, some more attractive than others. Boston State College for Teachers, which hasn't existed for over 40 years now, was my safety school, as the guidance counselors like to call it. I also applied to Boston University and Northeastern University and was pleased to be accepted at both, but I don't know what my plans would have been to pay for tuition. Brandeis University, described in various places, including Wikipedia, as a non-sectarian, co-educational institution sponsored by the Jewish community, was my dream school. Acceptance there seemed beyond my realistic aspirations. So I was very surprised as well as very pleased when I was not only accepted for matriculation, but received a financial aid package which covered the full cost of 4 years of tuition and room and board on campus. Brandeis was consistently ranked in the top 25 universities in the country in those days, so dream school and dream education seemed like appropriate enough appellations. I'm still good friends with my roommate Dave from sophomore year, and in fact, I'm godfather to one of his children. And I'm still in touch with 2 other friends from those long ago days. Like many of us my age, I have some regrets about my college years, mostly concerning not taking coursework seriously enough and not investigating course offerings deeply enough. But on the whole, I continue to feel grateful for the education Brandeis provided me and the increased range of experiences that education granted me. I graduated from Brandeis in 1974, and 7 years later, after lots of traveling through the US and Western Europe, I made my way to the headquarters of the kibbutz movement in Tel Aviv, the capital city of Israel, and applied for a place as a volunteer at Kibbutz Neve Yam on the Mediterranean Sea, 12 or 13 miles south of Haifa. During my 5 months there, I enjoyed the various volunteer jobs I was assigned, from dishwasher to kitchen man to working in the cotton fields, the tiny plastics factory, and the chicken house. Well, maybe enjoy is not quite the word for working in the chicken houses, which contained 22,000 birds each. A mucky job, if you catch my drift. Serving at the kibbutz meant as well enjoying long afternoons on the beach with a mix of friends from all over the world, almost all of us young and all adventurous. At Neve Yam, too, I met my second wife, Christiana, with whom I still enjoy long conversations several times a year, 37 years after our parting. So, I have much to be thankful to the Jewish people for. Among the most enjoyable aspects of kibbutz life were the day trips organized by the volunteer coordinator, Shoshana, who was herself a survivor of the death camps in Germany and Poland. She would forever be reminded of the horrors by the numbers tattooed in purple ink on the inside of her left forearm. One of the most memorable of those trips was to Jerusalem, with a side trip to Yad Vashem, Israel's official memorial to the victims of the Holocaust, dedicated to preserving the memory of the Jews who were murdered and, as Wikipedia notes, echoing the stories of the survivors, honoring Jews who fought their Nazi oppressors and Gentiles who selflessly aided Jews in need, and researching the phenomenon of the Holocaust, in particular, and genocide in general, with the aim of avoiding such events in the future. On the walls of one of the rooms are displayed paintings and artwork created by Jewish internees under the most trying and abhorrent conditions. For me, the longest lasting memories are of a glass-fronted container filled with shoes, the shoes of victims, men, women, and children, which were considered more worth saving by the Nazi oppressors than the bodies of the persons whose feet were shod with those shoes. Most of us are aware of the number 6 million, as in 6 million victims of genocidal madness. The museum's curator and chairman clarifies for us that the purpose of the exhibits is to allow us to look into the eyes of the individuals. There weren't 6 million victims, there were 6 million individual murders. These personal experiences create the context for me to grieve the wanton destruction of lives in the present conflict between Israel and Hamas, the so-called Islamic resistance movement headquartered in Gaza City. The horrors of the Holocaust are unimaginable, and I appreciate all the cultural efforts that exist and continue to be created to discourage us from ever forgetting the barbarism that we humans en masse are capable of. The film Schindler's List and the book by Thomas Connolly on which it's based, Schindler's Ark, and the films The Pianist, the book Thief, Europa, Europa, Au revoir les enfants, and of course, Sophie's Choice, and the book by William Styron on which it's based, Viktor Frankl's memoir and treatise, Man's Search for Meaning, the updated version of the Diary of Anne Frank, the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam, the Holocaust memorials in cities in the United States and around the world, including in Boston and New York and Paris. For centuries, the Jews were a people without a homeland, without a national identity, without a military dedicated to protecting a minority population despised for their very identity, something beyond their control, and nothing that should have brought them shame. Then, in 1948, in the shadow of the Second World War, and at the same year that Brandeis University was founded, was created the State of Israel, dedicated to, among other things, the goal that such a thing as the Holocaust should never occur again. Did the Jews, though, have a right to establish their homeland on a land already established, already populated by Palestinians? And in the conflicts that followed, did the Israelis have the right to restrict the movement of the original inhabitants and confine them to certain sections, which then became so overpopulated as to constitute lands of hardship and despair? These are political questions and moral questions, and the outcomes of such action should have been predictable. Loss of autonomy, loss of freedom, loss of dignity. The story of the occupation of the American continents by European colonists is not so different, though those colonists had nothing so dire as attempted genocide to justify their actions. I can understand the pressing needs of the Jewish people to claim for themselves a homeland. I expect we all can. And I can understand the resistance of the Palestinian people to having their homeland occupied and then taken away from them. The primary source of Jewish religious teachings is the Hebrew Bible, of course. The older texts appear to come from the 11th or 10th century before the Common Era. 3,100 to 3,200 years ago. Its texts preach peace as the ideal state, while recognizing that self-preservation means reliance on defensive measures that will, of necessity, include violence. Once violence has been sanctioned in a situation, it becomes the responsibility of leaders and a warrior class to determine when violence is necessary for self-preservation and when violence in the name of expansion of territory is rationalized as preserving future peace. In Israel, when I was there, it was customary for friends, acquaintances, and even shopkeepers and customers to part with the word shalom, which means peace. I wish you peace. As such, it is woven into the texture of everyday life. That word shalom comes from a longer word, shin lamed mem. Its earliest known form is in the name of Shalim, the ancient god of dusk, of Ukarit. The root word translates as whole, safe, intact. May you be safe, whole, intact. May nothing harm you. May your way in the world be safe and peaceful without disruption. A lovely verbal gift, but one based on the knowledge that our lives are not always safe. Our bodies and our families are not always whole or intact. The wish for peace is enshrined in biblical texts, including the priestly blessing in Numbers. May God lift up his face unto you and give you peace. In Isaiah 57:19 is enshrined peace, peace to the distant and the close. In Psalm 34, the faithful are instructed to seek peace and pursue it. The book of Isaiah contains some of the most famous and poetic teachings on peace, a peace that is longed for as the culmination of human history in the Messianic age. They shall beat their plowshares, their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift sword against nation, and they will no longer study warfare. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together. And a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child put his hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Knowledge of the Lord is knowledge of wholeness, that all is one. The conflict is a disturbance of wholeness, and in the end must yield to wholeness. Such knowledge is wisdom, lived wisdom, which is revelation made manifest. And yet there is war. And the Hebrew Bible understands that there will be war, but the teachings severely limit the ways in which wars can be conducted. The Torah provides the following rules for how to fight a war. 1, pursue peace before waging war. 2, preserve the ecological needs of the environment. 3, maintain sensitivity to human life. 4, the goal is peace. The rabbis of the Talmud saw war as an avoidable evil. They taught the sword comes to the world because of delay of justice and through perversion of justice. Just as Jews in Israel end a meeting or even a transaction with the word shalom, peace, Arabs will traditionally mark the end of a meeting with salam, or as-salam alaikum, peace be unto you. In Islam, there is an awareness that within each individual there is conflict. One of the most salient reasons for prayer is to bring about inner peace in the individual. This comes about through submission of the individual's will to the will of Allah, the Arabic word for God. The perfect state is a state of peace, the state in which Allah dwells. To submit to the will of Allah is to gain peace by leaving the individual will behind. Muhammad Mahbub Hassan, in his article, Islam, A Pathway to Peace and Harmony, puts it this way. Islam teaches that all humans are created equal and should be treated with respect and dignity. Muslims are encouraged to reach out to others, to build bridges of understanding, and to create a society that is based on mutual respect and cooperation. With so much emphasis on peace, then, why is there such a history of violence in the Middle East? We may also ask, with the Christian teachings on peace embraced by so many in the United States and around the world, why do American wars continue? Can we agree that those things we teach and the way we live our lives are often in conflict? Can we agree that our beliefs are one thing and actions based on raw emotions are quite another? When we feel threatened, the most primitive part of our brain is activated. The more we train ourselves to pay attention to our emotions and regulate our emotional responses, the more likely we are to rely in our actions on the teachings that we have embraced, or say we have embraced, which are ingrained into our religious traditions. The more we practice attaining inner peace through prayer or meditation combined with study, the more likely we are to be peaceful toward one another and to act with compassion. We are conditioned to feel threatened. We need to teach ourselves how to behave with dignity and respect when threatened. And so we come once more to the subject of emotional intelligence and the need for our societies to recognize its importance as central. The more we worship the intellect, strategy, tactics, the less we will attend to feelings and emotions. The intellect acts in a purely intellectual sphere only when doing mathematics or conducting scientific experiments. And even then, in societies such as ours, with the importance placed on individual achievement, we are tempted to wrap our ego in achievements. The pulse races, the heart beats fast. Can we be the first to achieve some milestone? How will we be rewarded? I cannot parse out the individual strands of history that have led to the present conflict in Israel and the Gaza Strip, but I understand rage and the desire to strike out, to get revenge, to punish others for what they've done to us. And I know that that way is a way to perpetual war, perpetual oppression, perpetual violence. The raining of bombs on Palestinians in the Gaza Strip is killing thousands of people with no connection to Hamas other than being ruled by them. The unprovoked attack by Hamas on unprotected Israeli targets on October 7th killed thousands of innocents. The kidnapping of civilians and holding them for ransom is a violent act. There will be no peace while participants are motivated by rage and the thirst for blood. I thank Dan Hotchkiss for the article by Alison Kaplan-Summer he shared with me as published in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz 1 week ago, entitled, "Most U.S. Jews Don't Want to Choose. They Can Stand with Israel and Stand with Palestinians." Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum is the spiritual leader of New York's Congregation Bet Simchat Torah, the world's largest LGBT synagogue. In the article, Rabbi Kleinbaum argues that for most of us, the way we think of the conflict in Israel and Gaza is in binary terms. One side or the other is bad. The other side is good, heroes in a fight for justice. A position without nuance, a binary choice. And so we project that bias on all our interpretations, including our assessment of how our president crafts his position. The article concludes with Rabbi Kleinbaum's assessment, and maybe that's a good place to bring this Sunday sermon near its end. I believe that the majority of American Jews are actually looking for this vision. They want to hear that they can stand with Israel and stand with the rights of Palestinians. They don't have to choose. And yes, today that's a very narrow place to be. But I reject the binary that forces a simple choice. And even though it's not an easy place to be, I believe if we keep standing in this place and pushing the message out, more and more people will join us. And as always, I take encouragement in the words of Wayne Arneson in a reading we've heard often from our hymnal. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone.